During November last year, I had the honor of being a co-host of the Network to Heal Summit, which was created by Mathias and Doris Berner in Germany. These two beautiful souls are passionate about sharing the knowledge of homeopathy and many other natural health modalities to people around the globe. Mathias and Doris have given me permission to share some of the interviews from the Network to Heal Summit with our loyal listeners on the Homeopathy Hangout podcast. Be sure to visit www.networktoheal.de and sign up to their newsletter so you can be notified of future summits. Also be sure to check out www.matthiasberner.com for his other summits that he hosts throughout the year. That's www.matthiasberner.com, and both websites are in English and German. So today's guest is fifth generation Australian herbalist as well as being a homeopath, Ian White. Ian also featured on episode 155 of this podcast, so be sure to check out that episode too. The theme for the Network to Heal Summit was all about healing trauma, and more specifically the trauma we faced as a collective during and in the aftermath of COVID. So in this recording, Ian shares with us some of the Australian Bushflower Essences that we can use for this specifically to heal ourselves and our clients. I personally learned so much from this episode, and I can't wait to re-listen to it several times over, as Ian is truly a gifted teacher and a fountain of knowledge. Be sure to check out his website at www.ausflowers.com.au. That's www.ausflowers.com.au. Enjoy the episode. Hello everyone, and welcome to the Network to Heal Summit. Today, I'm speaking with the founder of the Australian Bushflower Essences, Ian White. Welcome, Ian.
Thank you, Eugenie.
So when Mathias asked me to find some Australian homeopaths for the Network to Heal Summit, needless to say, I really jumped at the opportunity to get to speak with you again after interviewing you on the Homeopathy Hangout podcast, because this summit that Mathias has put together is all about healing this trauma in the aftermath of COVID. And I know that your beautiful Australian Bushflower Essences have such an integral part in healing these very strange times that we're living in at the moment. Now, you have prepared a beautiful presentation for our audience on the Bushflower Essences, and I've got a bunch of questions that I'm going to ask you afterwards. But before we get into that, I just really have one question for you. With your background of naturopathy and homeopathy and herbal medicine, and I know you grew up with your grandmother, which you'll be sharing the story with shortly, going into the bush and, seeing her making these tinctures, there's so many different ways that you could have made these medicines. You could have had homeopathic remedies, which is more diluted and succussed, and you could have made tinctures where you had the plants sitting in alcohol for several days. But you have a very beautiful sunshine method that you use to very gently extract, not extract, it's so gentle, elicit the essences of these very special Australian bush flowers. What was it about that particular technique, do you think, that attracted you to that? Because it's different, so many different ways you could have prepared it, but this beautiful, gentle technique that you're using, what do you think it was that inspired you to use that?
I think it was really that inner guidance that I was getting. I think I'll mention the presentation of a friend with cancer, and we're setting up a healing circle for him. And, at that point, I was predominantly homeopath. But then the information coming through was to really make them as flower essences. And I think I enjoyed that because I think the vision early on was always that the children being brought up in households where the essences could be used them. And so you'd have parents who maybe haven't trained in natural therapies to know how, side effects from herbs, or know about aggravations, or have to do a lot of research and study to understand and know how to prescribe homeopathy, where this was a very more straightforward and gentle way and without side effects. So it felt nice that we went down that path. And of course, then you have some of the essences like boab, which grows in your state, where, it's working miasmatically as well. So it's interesting how there's that nice overlap with the vibrational remedies, which are both homeopathy and the flower essences.
Absolutely. And I actually feel like with some substances, like, that's why I like Peter Tamanello's work also with the crystals and how it's immersed in water. It feels to me like some substances shouldn't be triturated or be lying in alcohol for a long period of time. Like it should be just gently extracted, through like an essence type method. So I don't know. It feels that way to me with some of these flower essences as well. I really like the way in which you make them, that they're not triturated or like destroyed in some sort of way. It's just they're beautiful essences that are just taken and used in such a gentle way.
And, we have some herbalists who will put the bush essences into the fluid extracts and what have you. And to me, that feels like casting pearls before swine. So, what, I'm very happy to still use herbal medicine, but not together mixed up. Like, do your essences morning and night and then do your herbal mix, just around the mealtime. And that feels better.
Definitely. Yeah, definitely. Well, we have got a beautiful presentation that we're going to enjoy of you sharing with us a whole variety of ways in which these beautiful remedies can be used. And I just want to say the other thing I really like about your remedies is how you go into their natural habitat to go and get them to go and extract these essences in places where they thrive. And, at one point you'll show us an image of just how high up on a mountain you had to go. And I'm sure there's all sorts of scary and interesting places that you've had to go through. And I can just see you out there in the Australian heat, getting that boab essence. And so there's really so much love and care that has gone into making these remedies. And I just love that they haven't been cultivated in like a plant, like a manufacturing plant or anything like that. They've been made out in nature in their purest, most beautiful, perfect form. And when we use these remedies, that really does come through. So we're going to enjoy this beautiful presentation and we'll come back with some questions for you at the end. Yeah.
Okay, so let's look at the PowerPoint where I'm going to go in detail about some of the specific essences, talk about some of the different qualities on there. And Hildegard von Bingen, it's very appropriate being in a German conference that she was one of the early pioneers of working with flower essences. Hildegard would have the nuns, this is in the 12th century, lay muslin sheets out over the flowers at night. In the morning, they would collect the sheets, wring out the dew, and give it internally to treat emotional problems. If someone was very physically ill, they would wrap them in the sheets in hydrotherapy. And even before Hildegard, we know the Egyptians also collected the dew 3,000 years ago. And then we had Paracelsus. Paracelsus was a very instrumental figure in the 16th century with medicine, and he also used to collect the dew of flowers to treat emotional imbalances. And then a lot of that knowledge seems to have been lost and brought forward again by Dr. Edward Bach or Bach, a homeopath in the 1930s who wanted to find a more natural way. He was very famous in homeopathy for his bowel nosodes, but he wanted to get away from playing with people's fecal matter and see what nature could have. In fact, he was influenced by two English homeopaths, Cooper and his son were their surnames, who walked around with glass bell jars on their hips, picked with flowers floating in water and walking in a way so the sun was continually shining there. So he was quite influenced by that. And Bach, he died in 1936. He ended up with 38 remedies from flowers. Now, every flower has a healing quality. And what I've noticed in my work is that when there's a need in the society, flowers will come down to address that need. And, the Australian Aborigines, for thousands of years, work with flowers. When the first white settlers came, they noticed that the Aborigines were sick, they would float flowers in water and drink that water. In 1992, I organised the third International Flower Essence Conference, and the conference was opened by an Aboriginal elder who, as a young boy, was cured by polio by the technique that the tribe worked with for clearing very severe physical and emotional problems, working with the flowers. They regard such profound treatment that the soul of the person was altered and they were given a new name to be known by. Now, my own personal story is I'm a fifth-generation Australian herbalist. My great-great-grandmother came to Australia in the 1850s to work as a herbalist on the goldfields. And my great-grandmother and grandmother were some of the first pioneers looking at medicinal properties of Australian plants. And I had the good fortune of living next door to my grandmother. Our property is backed into National Park, and as a young boy I'd spend as much time as I could in the bush with her, going on bushwalks. She'd point out the various plants. I'd help her make up the extracts and the fluid extracts and the tinctures. And it was from her I got a real appreciation that there were so many healing plants in the Australian bush. And, you know, we joked that my father was the black sheep of the family because he was a pharmacist, but also a herbalist. And this is a shot of my father and I'm a young boy. And he wasn't as familiar with the Australian plants. And then I went to university, was doing a science degree, got very sick traveling through India, and came back and started to work with Tai Chi, yoga, meditation, got back into working with herbs to rebuild my health. And a good friend of mine who I shared a house with when I was a student, this is, you know, young man, early 30s, was diagnosed with bowel cancer. And because of my background with meditation, he asked if I'd hold a healing circle the night before they operated. Unfortunately, when they operated, the cancer was everywhere. There was nothing they could do for him. So I continued this healing circle weekly and opened up to anyone who needed it. Now, he died about 6 months later. And shortly after his death, in the meditations in the healing circles, I started getting pictures of plants, told where to go and make them up and what their healing qualities were. And I was very excited because, you know, I was already a naturopath practicing, and I was predominantly a homeopath, but I liked the Bach flowers because they were simple, safe, anyone could use them. But I thought, why isn't someone working with Australian plants? So, you know, because I knew how strong the healing powers were from being as a young boy in the bush. So for about a 2-year period, I was regularly in the bush. I was doing a lot of research, you know, using them on my patients. And there'd be a synchronicity. Patients coming in the day after I'd made a remedy all needed that remedy. So I could see how it was working. And also the synchronicity showed me I was on the right path. And the results were quite spectacular. Rather than giving the English ones 4 times a day for a month, I could give the Australian ones morning and night for just a 2-week period. And my patients could really feel things were happening, where sometimes with the Bach they couldn't determine if anything was happening. So then I started giving the essences after a couple of years and getting great results to some medical friends, some naturopaths, acupuncturists, see if they could replicate the similar results, which they did. So I was very excited and I started publishing information. Now, at that point, I thought, you know, they're Australian plants, they're just for Australians. But then we had people in Europe, North America, South America, hearing about them, importing them there and getting equally good results. So I realized we're just very much like a global village. And something working in Australia can work equally as well, say in Germany. And the essences are prepared using the sunshine method, which was one of the methods that Bach did, where the flowers are picked under ideal conditions. And I'm working with this flower, pink mulla, grows in the centre of Australia. I don't grow them. I find them in the wild because they have to have a strong life force to survive the droughts, the floods, you know, the bushfires. So I'm filling the surface area of the bowl, making sure I'm not touching the flower, and I'm going to fill that surface area, and then the sun will release the healing vibration of the flower into the water. It takes about 1.5 hours to 2 hours in Australia. In England, with less intensity, the sun's about 4 hours. And there's a point where the flowers go limp when the energy has been released into the bowl. At that point, I'll release the flowers, and this is what I'm working with. The energy has been now transferred to the water, and that is added to brandy. And this is our mother tincture. I will then take that back to our offices. And, we have over 20 staff, but I'm the one who goes and makes them up because you've got to be in a very balanced state. So if I've had a bit of a bad day or an argument with someone, I wouldn't make an essence. And from the mother tincture, the next dilution down is to the stock level. And there are 70 individual essences. They come from all parts of Australia. And from the stock, you would dilute it one more time to the dosage bottle, which is what the patient would take. And with the bush essences, the standard dose is 7 drops on rising, 7 drops on retiring. If it's an emotional quality, we'd suggest 2 weeks, then reassess. If it's a physical condition, it just means that emotional imbalance has been there longer, we'd take it for a 4-week period. Now, certainly I'll show you case histories where you've got much quicker results than that, but that's as a guideline. And, you can be working with your homeopathics as well as the bush essences. I used to teach at the Lakeland College. I think Ian Watson is going to be one of the speakers, one of the early founders of that college. And, I'd regularly teach there. And once I asked the homeopaths, is it a problem that, if you're using the bush essences, can you make sure you can tell the difference what the homeopathic remedy is doing as the bush essence? And they said, look, if you couldn't tell the difference, you're not a very good homeopath. And they're both vibrational. The main difference is the bush essences are self-adjusting, whereas, you give thuya too long, you can get an aggravation, or you give the wrong remedy. You're not getting the aggravations. They're self-adjusting. Okay. I personally wouldn't put essences in the homeopathic. I know some people who put, say, Sturt Desipie, the remedy we'll look at shortly for grief, into Ignatia. You could use them both, but I'd use them at different times of the day. And the beauty of the essences, they've got a reputation worldwide for acting very deeply, very quickly, very powerfully. And Australia had the first flowering plants, and it's also had the highest number of flowering plants. Also, being an island, the last one to separate from Antarctica, when we were all joined to South America and Africa and India, was the plants grew up in isolation. And so they're very ancient looking, I think, is commonly. And there's a real power in the land. And that energy comes out through the plants. And I go to very pristine environments. Like I teach regularly every year in Europe, and sometimes I might be teaching and just a few kilometers away, there is horrendous battles in either the First or Second World War where thousands of people killed violently. That leaves a psychic imprint in the land. So where I'm making the essences, they're away from roads, power lines, pollution, and psychically very pure. And they come from the desert areas, the tropical, the alpine, all the regions within Australia. And I'll give some examples of some of the flowers. This is Waratah, and it was the most esteemed flower for the Aborigines. It was the only one they ever gave to the white settlers when they came. And some of you might be familiar with Orosoma, the 2 coloured bottles. And the chief blender of Orosoma, who was at that 92 conference, and he was saying that there are 5 master flowers on the planet, Waratah being one of them. It would have been the floral emblem of Australia, except it doesn't found in all the states. And, Waratah, it's a very deep acting, very quick acting remedy. We use it when someone's suicidal, that black night of the soul. And it's no good saying, well, take the remedy for 2 weeks. If you're still suicidal, take it again. You need something that's going to grab them by the scruff of the neck and pull them back. And that's what the Waratah does. And, probably one of the most satisfying parts of my work is getting letters from countries I've never been to, from people saying they used the Waratah on a family member or a patient who was suicidal and it really saved their life. Sometimes at workshops, people will come up to me and say, the reason I'm here today is because someone gave me Waratah, I was going to kill myself. And we're just seeing so many young people especially suiciding. Also, in a lot of countries, there's a peak for men around 65 when they've retired from work, and often they realize they've focused on work to the detriment of their relationships and connection to family, and there's an emptiness when they pull the work aspect away from them, and they often very depressed, empty, and it's another time when suicide is high. It's a amazing one to see in the wild. It's the Latin name, tilapia, means seen from afar. And the story with this one, there's always a little bit of magic in making up the essences. I got the information about Waratah right at the end of the flowering season. And it was only in the mountains, which is a bit cold, that they were still in flower. And I was in contact with a professor of botany who told me about a spot renowned for the last flowering Waratahs. And he wasn't sure if there'd still be any there. The night before, I cancelled all my patients. It was a day I was free to go. The forecast was heavy rain. You need sun to make the essences. And, you know, in my meditation that night, I saw a beautiful Waratah. So I thought, fantastic, this is a good omen. So then I travelled there the next day. It was about a 2-hour drive to get there, heavy rain. I was wandering around. There were a lot of Waratahs, but they'd passed their peak, so I couldn't use them. Plus, there was no sun. And then I found a perfect Waratah. I had the same markings I'd seen the night before. So I stopped and I was just meditating with it. And then suddenly there was a break in the clouds. There was a shaft of sunlight about, 2 meters in diameter around me and the Waratah. It's almost like spirit said, okay, here's the sun. And, I was amazed. I pulled the bowl out and started preparing it. 20 meters away, the rain was coming down quite heavily. And the rain stayed away. The sunshine was on the bowl to the exact time when the essence was complete. And then it just went pitch black and it started very heavy rain. And it's very much an alchemic interaction, making the essences between the plant kingdom, the human kingdom, but also that spiritual kingdom as well. And there needs to be a lot of respect and reverence and, in making the essence. And, I've got a number of books. There's stories about some of the Aboriginal legends, like the Waratah was always associated with great strength and courage. And interesting, I found a lot of the legends, a number of years after I'd been working with, it was a really nice confirmation of what I was doing. And, we'll look at the Sturt Desert Pea, and I put there the Aboriginal legend in about this flower as well. And we'll talk about that shortly. Now, originally when I finished my training, I was a homeopath. The thing that I got a little bit frustrated with, that I like to have hands-on contact. I didn't want to just be repertorizing for the full time. But that legacy was I never gave the remedies mix, only single remedies. And then I had a phone call early one morning. A patient I'd been treating, he and his wife. The wife was pregnant with their first child. He just witnessed her in a very bad car accident in front of their house. He was calling from the hospital. She was in a coma. They didn't think she was going to make it. And he said to me, I just know there's something you can do. And at that point, an inner guidance came through saying to mix a number of remedies together. I gave him the bottle. Of course, she was in a coma. You could only put it on her wrist's temple. He came back a week later wanting more and said, I said, well, what happened? He said, well, after 3 days, after coming out of the coma, they advised him it may not be the same person you knew before. There's been a lot of brain damage. And she had lost the baby. And by the end of the week, she was back to normal. The medical specialists who were working in the intensive care said, we don't know what was in that bottle. We can't put it down. Why else would she recover? And they continued to work with the combination, which we called the emergency essence. And some of you might be familiar with the Bach rescue remedy. Fantastic remedy. The feedback we get, this works even deeper, which is saying a tremendous amount. So the emergency can be any emotional, physical trauma. You can use it quite frequently. You use every 10 minutes if someone's in great anguish or pain. Of course, we have oral sprays, we have mists, we also got cream. If someone's, say, arthritic, or they've got a sports injury, you can use the emergency essence cream on there as well. One of the other remedies in the emergency is fringe violet. This is a great one in dealing with shock, and I know Mathias's theme for this conference is dealing a lot with trauma. Fringe violet, it has the ability to timeline. Let's say you're in a bad car accident 6 years ago. If you haven't released the shock from that experience, fringe violet can go back to that time, and by now it's stored on a cellular level and release it from the body. And we find this is used a lot, say, in our sexuality essence, when there's been trauma, quite often in childhood, sexual abuse, for example. So it's our ability to release shock and trauma from the body. Also, if you've lost consciousness, it could be anesthetic, it could be from a car accident, being knocked out with a hockey stick in the head, for example. The aura can be opened, same with hallucinogenic drugs, heroin, getting drunk from alcohol, and opens the aura. Fringe violet will seal the aura as well. So it's a very, very powerful remedy. Another remedy that we work a lot with for stress is high bursa. And this is very much for a post-traumatic stress disorder. And one of the consequences of people being very hypervigilant. So we'd use the fringe violet for the original trauma, but then that hypervigilance, never being able to relax, always on guard, looking for a threat out there. And that's where the high bursa is very good. It could be, children being brought up where there's a lot of domestic violence in the home. They're especially related to alcohol. So they're always on guard, looking when there might be a threat or a danger. The other kids go to a sleepover and they're relaxing, having fun, but they never totally relax. So as well as the 70 singles, we've made up a number of combinations. I mentioned the emergency essence, and they're already in dosage strength, ready to go. And one of the other combinations I mentioned is purifying essence, which is a great emotional and physical detox for the body. We are aware that, say, with the kidney, as well as that physical action, the emotion associated kidney is fear and anxiety. So if someone is very fearful, they are more at risk of having problems with their kidney. If you're very angry and cranky a lot of the time, then that will affect the liver. Okay. So if you tend to hoard and hold on, that's going to affect large intestine. So when you're taking the purifying, you're getting the emotional detox, but you're also working on all those physical organs of elimination. Large intestine, lymphatics, kidney, liver. Okay. And, we've had some interesting results. We've had people who've been smoking for many years, taking the purifying, even though they haven't smoked now for, say, a decade, old nicotines come out on their hands. We've had people, anesthetics coming out of their body, for example. And one of the key remedies in this combination is the wild potato bush. And what it does, it helps release heavy metals and other toxins from the body. And a lot of the heavy metals are stored in gynoid fat in the tissue. This is like a safety deposit, if you like. And the wild potato bush helps to release it, and it's flushed out through the kidney. So we've also got this flower, dog rose, in the purifying, because it's stimulating the kidney to be able to cope with the release of the aluminium or the nickel or the mercury, lead, for example, being released. And I have a book called Happy Healthy Kids, which is available in German. All my books are available in German. And there's a testimonial that I have in there. There was a young child, 1-year-old, and had very high levels of lead. 24 is regarded as being very dangerous. And again, just working with the purifying essence was able to bring that back to normal, and very quickly. It normally takes a couple of months just to drop it down a few points. So, if I'm having a family husband and wife who are wishing to start their family, then we'll do a detox first. The healthier the parents are, the healthier the children will be. Now, if we look at our combination, the purifying, pre-COVID, if someone was going to take a vaccination, then I would recommend that they would do the purifying essence for 2 weeks afterwards because of the aluminium, the mercury, the formaldehyde, which is in the vaccination. But then with what's happened during the COVID and vaccinations, spike proteins, etc., we're still recommending that they take the purifying, but this time for a month. And we recommend they add in themselves the Waratah. And that's for all the heart problems, the myocarditis, for example. As well as the Waratah being added to the purifying, we're suggesting tall mulla mulla for the blood clots. So rather than 2 weeks for the purifying after vaccination for COVID, we're suggesting taking it for a month. Again, 7 drops on rising, 7 drops on retiring. Now, I mentioned earlier that there was a flower, the Sturt Desert Pea, which is also some Aboriginal legends. This is what the flower looks like. And it grows in the desert, especially on the salt lakes, dry salt lakes. And in the Aboriginal stories, they say the salt lakes were formed from all the tears over hundreds of years from humans falling on the ground. And that's where you get the Sturt Desert Pea flower rising from. There's some other beautiful legends in there, again, around grief and sadness, which are in my books. And Sturt Desert Pea is dealing with that sadness and grief. During COVID, we came up with a combination called Boost, and we put the Sturt Desert Pea in because grief and sadness affects the lungs. And, that was such a big impact for people having problems with COVID. Also, we've put it in the men's essence because men tend to hold on to anger reasonably, they let go of it easily, but they hold on to sadness. It's almost reversed for women. So once you get past the anger, there's often this deep well of sadness. And, a lot of studies on men have shown that men hold on to, their first love affair they had when they were teenagers or in their early 20s, even though they might be now in their 70s. There's still that holding on. So Sturt Desert Pea is a wonderful one for grief and sadness, which I think most people are holding on to some degree. Now, some of the work that we've been doing in other countries is like in Brazil. For many years, we've been donating our essences to orphanages there. And when we started our work, the children on average were getting about 6 cases of bronchitis each per year. It was costing the Brazilian government about 40 to 50 reais just in treating. And they were getting a lot of antibiotics. And the children obviously weren't happy. We know we said that connection between grief and sadness and the lungs. So here you have children, their parents were not able to or didn't want to look after them. And there's that deep sadness coming from that. And so Sturt Desert Pea was one of the main remedies we were putting into the essences for the children. Sometimes we'd have a flower essence therapist or doctor or a psychologist who would make individual essences for the children. Otherwise, we would train the cooks to put it into the food and the drinks. Not quite as ideal, but at least the children are getting it. And these were the remedies that we were working with. And this was in one of those orphanages in Brazil. They asked me when I went to visit there if I would give the children the drops. And each child had their own bottle, and they're very proud of their bottle, and like little birds opening up and giving them the drops. And after a year of working with the essences, the incidence of bronchitis dropped from 6 cases a year to less than 1. The children were a lot happier, healthier. It wasn't costing the government as much money either. And this is a psychologist there who was making up the individual essences for all the children. And my goal has always been that the families will have the essences to bring their children up with. And if you think of your own childhood, how much easier it would have been if the essence had been available to help you through the more difficult, challenging times. You see that intensity of the children there. And that flower stirred desert pea, it's a very deep acting remedy. I had one woman I was treating, and she was an internationally known healer, and she was crippled with rheumatism. There was deformity on her hands. She couldn't even sit in the chair when I saw her. She was in so much pain. And in the consultation, it turned out the husband had left her for another woman 4 years earlier, and that had been a key point in her life. So I, prescribed her the stirred desert pea for the sadness. Now, she rang back 5 days later in tears and said, all I've been doing for these last 4 days is crying. And she said, but you wouldn't believe it, I'm free of pain. And she put her hands up and the deformity had gone. Now, if you would tell a rheumatologist you could, get it changed like that in 4 or 5 days, they would laugh at you, think you're a crazy person. Yet when you treat the cause of the problem, it's amazing how the physical can respond. Some of the other essences that we used a lot in the orphanages included the red helmet orchid. Now, this flower grows in the southwest of Australia, and it's dealing with the relationship between father and child. Even as an adult, if you're a father, you can take this remedy for enhancing the bond between you and your children, or you might have an elderly father. Your father might even be dead, but if the relationship wasn't good, you could still be working with the red helmet. It works both ways. And this essence was prepared up the very top of this peak here, around that area here. It was a bit challenging to climb up and get this essence. Sometimes not always easy making flower essences in Australia. Sometimes we've got to deal with crocodiles and all sorts of things in the tropical areas. And in the other areas, essences is bottle brush. Bottle brush is dealing with the bond between a mother and a child. And of course, if you think of the orphanages, the parents aren't there. And even if they're adopted, that's, the abandonment by or the lack of relationship between the biological parent can still have an impact. And we give, the new parents these essences to help the bond for the child they're adopting. And the other essence that we worked with was the tall yellow top, that sense of abandonment and alienation, not belonging, that sense of being abandoned by the parents. Again, another deep acting remedy. We use this essence it's the main bush essence we use for depression. Another very deep acting remedy, and I think for all the homeopaths will like this one because it's also very miasmatic, is boab. Now, this is shot in Madagascar. There's 9 species of boab in Madagascar, 1 in Africa, 1 in Australia. Of course, I'm working with the Australian one. Quite an amazing tree. It grows in the northwest. It's 47 degrees Celsius the day I made this essence up. So we don't need the Bach method of boiling in making the essence, only the sunshine one. And boab is clearing the negative family patterns which can get down passed from generation to generation. So if there is a parent had an addictive personality, that's will likely get passed down. It can be also genetic problems being passed down, a lot of behavioural ones. And for the Aborigines in this area, even today, they still have the traditional birthing method as the woman will go off by herself, and if it happens between December and February when this is in flower, they will be given some of the boab flowers. They dig a hole, line it with the boab flowers, squat and deliver the baby into that hole. So the first contact the baby has with anything on the planet is boab, which they are also aware of clearing those negative patterns not being passed down. Now, what we know is that this will also clear miasms, and not just one like might clear psoriatic, but it's also working on tubercular, psychotic, miasms as well. It's a very, very deep acting remedy, this particular one. This is the flower. It's aromatic. It's 15 centimeters long. I'm just going to pick a few key things. This is electro. It's a combination. We use it for against a lot of radiation, not just electromagnetic radiation. And it also comes in a pendant, so you can wear it next to your body, especially with 5G and, everyone's got their handies and front of the computer for a long time. We're absorbing a lot of radiation. This one just helps release the electromagnetic radiation. We're noticing, for example, children getting tumors, brain tumors, but the side of the head where they're putting their phone up to it, because the skull isn't as thick in a child, about half the thickness of an adult. Also, there's more fluid, they absorb the radiation more readily. So, we've got all the advantages in technology, but we can also counter with the essences the detrimental aspects of them as well. And one of the key remedies in this is mulla mulla. It grows one of the hottest parts of Australia. And this is very much dealing with radiation, for example. And now that could be gamma radiation. If someone's going to have an X-ray, we would suggest they take the electro immediately before. In fact, we've got 10 case histories of people not being able to get an X-ray after taking the electro. Normally you get it, but you're not absorbing as much. Radiation therapy for cancer. The people recover a lot better. They don't get burnt. There's not as much red marking, scarring. And mulla mulla for fevers. It's a bit like you can think of your ferrum phos, your aconites, for example. And any burning in the body, like this is better than causticum. We've had many people with 3rd degree burns who worked with either mulla mulla or the combinations it's in, not needing skin grafts, including my own daughter when she was very little, falling back on a Dimplex heater. This is a close-up of the flower. Again, we think ferrum phos. Ferrum burns red, phosphorus burns white, and here we have those two colours. Some of the landscape where you find it growing. This is the world's oldest river system. Doesn't look much of a river, it's more of a drought time. And the red centre, it's an iron oxide in the soil, giving it the colour. Now, you might recognise this as Chernobyl, which went up in '86. And 12,000 Ukrainian workers were putting a concrete shell over it. They all died within 15 years from cancer. And there's an organisation called Green Cross, an offshoot of Red Cross. They look at environmental factors. Gorbachev was head for a while. And each year they would go through Belarus, which was the worst affected country from the radiation, monitoring the children. This is many years after the Chernobyl erupted. And the children with the highest levels in the summer were taken to the Alps, and they have cardiologists, endocrinologists, neurologists trying to clear the radiation from them. And we donated a lot of our electro for them, and they found it was the most effective treatment they ever had. It cleared 42% of the radiation in 2 weeks. The next best thing they've ever found was 20%. And also many of the other symptoms the children had of collapsing, fainting when they're exercising, fevers, etc., were also cleared. There's our mulla mulla. And we had some very bad fires in Australia 4 years ago. 2 billion animals were killed in the fires. It was like the whole country was on fire. And we had people all around the world quite traumatized by what was happening. It's like the power of nature. And, many people lost their homes. Many people lost their lives as well. And the mulla mulla is dealing with trauma from heat, burning, hot objects. And we use this a lot. Very powerful one. And I think the planet's getting hotter. We're having more fire activity, for example. This is Terry Hills, where I grew up. Now, this next shot is after a fire, the devastation. Some plants respond well to fire. It opens their seeds, but others, you never find them coming back. And in those terrible bushfires we had a few years ago, this is some shots from that time. The flames were 30 meters high, going 100 kilometers an hour. Animals couldn't escape. Many people couldn't either. We had the animals coming into suburban areas trying to get water and get treated. So we donated again a lot of the mulla for the vets, the animal rescue groups, the zoos. The essences work very quickly on animals and young babies too. Now this is the fire. This is 3 years later. So you can see how it starts to regenerate. And that's why I don't grow the flowers. I find them in the wild because I have to survive the droughts, those fires, floods, which usually the droughts are broken by floods. Now there are some benefits. Some flowers respond well after fires. And one is the pink flannel flower. And it's the smoke from very intense fires which helps germinate the seeds. Now, this hadn't been seen flowering for 40 years when I first made it up in 2004. In fact, botanists doubted it actually existed. And this remedy is a wonderful one for that heart area. It's bringing about gratitude. There's a Japanese researcher, Emoto, did a lot of experiments with freezing water and crystalline structure of water. And he could get tap water, had no crystalline structure. He'd write the word love and then refreeze it. And notice that it transformed the crystalline structure of the water. Or if you had good crystalline water from a pristine environment, and he wrote the word hate on a vial of that water, that would shatter the crystals. So he found that love was the highest emotional state, which we can understand, but gratitude was equal to love. And that's what the pink flannel flower does. It's bringing about a sense of gratitude. Just seeing all the wonderful things we tend to take for granted in life. But for the children, it keeps their heart chakras open. And if we look here, this beautiful intense pink of the flower. There's also pink in the petals as well. And pink is that love vibration. They've come here to do a lot of healing through their ability to love. Unfortunately, the negative aspects of humanity, their hearts can quite often close down. This one just keeps it open. It's a great one for adults too, this flower. But an example of how fire has worked to help in some ways some of the plants here in Australia. Now, as well as taking the drops, you can also work topically. This is our space clearing mist. So if you're a practitioner and you've had people coming to you and pouring out all their problems, at the end of the day, there's a lot of psychic energy that builds up in your clinic room or your pharmacy where you are. And using space clearing is a really good way to shift and clear that. Same as if you're traveling, you're going to Airbnb, a hotel room. You don't know who was in that room before you. So we suggest, really spraying. It's the first thing I do when I'm traveling, when I get to a new room, is spray the space clearing, shift that old energy. And the children are very sensitive today, even more so than previous generations. Young babies coming home feeling unsettled. Sometimes they're picking up energetically things that the parents are unaware of. So do your space clearing will really settle things down. And just to give you, show you a little bit of the scope, the variation of where you can work. This is sexuality essence, and it's really addressing more trauma and sexual abuse rather than low libido. And for example, we have the flannel flower. It's a bit like the Edelweiss, similar texture. Look at this lovely green tips at the end of the leaves. Okay? It's almost like a hand with fingernails reaching out. Look in the bud. It's all that very delicate holding. So it's a lot of sensitivity. It's feeling comfortable with physical intimacy. And if someone's been sexually abused, they often feel uncomfortable, even if they're with the partner they want to be with. This allows them to be able to enjoy that physical intimacy. Also helps emotional intimacy to express feelings as well. And our fringe bath, maybe there was that sexual abuse in the past, to help release the shock and trauma from that. And to give you an example how this works, I had a patient, young girl, early 20s. She, been treating her and the family. And then one day she said, just as she was about to leave at the end of the consultation, "Oh, by the way, I've got cancer of the cervix. I'm going to have some surgery. Is there anything you might suggest?" And so we sat down, talked, and it turned out at 15, she'd been sodomized against her will by her boyfriend. And she'd never felt comfortable sexually ever since that. So feeling that was probably the trigger, we gave her that sexuality essence. And she called back saying, "I've got this intense burning around the cervix, but it feels good. Feels like something's happening." And she went for a pre-operative check and they couldn't find any trace of the cancer. And that was within 2.5 weeks from taking the essence. So again, there can be very deep and profound healing when you're getting and treating the cause of the problems. And in Ayurvedic medicine, traditional Chinese medicine, they're saying that 90% of our physical symptoms stem from emotional imbalance. So we can treat the symptoms with the essences, but we can also go that one step more, getting back to the cause. And the essences are being used in many countries. And we have, teachers in countries. This is our teacher Regina in Natal, the northeast of Brazil. And she was involved with the University of Natal doing an experiment, a study on children 6 years old with behavioural problems, working with the bush essences. The results were so excellent that the state government of Natal got Regina to train 400 health practitioners in using the bush essences. And they'd be in poor communities. You might have a psychologist, a doctor, a nurse, say a dentist. And all these health practitioners were trained in how to use the bush essences. The Natal government liked that it was inexpensive, but also, very effective. This is also being used in the schools there as well. This is in one of those medical centres. And that's my wife, Jane, and I, and with Regina, and this is the staff of one of the medical centres who are using the bush essences. In fact, it was planned that the Brazilian government was going to implement what Natal was doing and train people in the bush essences, and then their economy nosedived and went very south, so it's been put on hold and there's been a change of government. We're still hopeful that this is something that can work. Again, there's no side effects, it's inexpensive and very effective. Now, we have a 60-hour training course, which is in English and German. And you have your own tutor, do it at your own pace. Also, many of my workshops during COVID were recorded as webinars and they are available on our website. And we have a level 1, it's our introductory 2-day workshop. It's available with German subtitles as well. This is the details of our German distributor. And next year, on the 25th and 26th of May, I'll be teaching 2 one-day workshops in Germany, working with women's well-being as one day and also on mental health, using the bush essences in both these areas. And below is our contact, Australian Bushflower Essences, and our website. Yeah, so if you want to follow up, our books are in German as well. So And finally, a remedy for the practitioner. It's the carers. They're so good at looking after others. Sometimes they neglect to start looking after themselves. So, the carer's essence is a good one. It's like a little tap on the shoulder. Are you keeping outside interests? Are you just getting more tunnel vision, only communicating with other homeopaths, for example? You're taking days off, you're having holidays. You're allowing enough time to catch up with family and friends. One of the key remedies in that is the alpine mint bush. It's a very good one for the carers. But there's other essences in that combination. I often recommend the practitioners, look, give yourself a 2 weeks dose of the carers once a year, just to review how you're looking after yourself as well as looking after all the patients that you're treating. So that comes up to the end of the PowerPoint. I just wanted to give you a bit of an overview of some of the areas of the work of the bush essences and what they can do. So thanks for watching the PowerPoint.
So thank you so much, Ian, for covering all those incredible flowers. I've definitely learned a lot from all of that. And I was really grateful to see that there are essences that can help with all of this fallout that we've had, not just from COVID, but also from the COVID vaccine as well, which is something that I'm seeing a lot in my clinic at the moment. So I am trying to get every little tool possible that's out there to help our clients, and especially with helping our clients with conception. That's something that previously I really prided myself on how good I was at getting people pregnant. Since the vaccine, it's been a lot harder. So can you tell us, the purifying essences, you said that it can be used post the vaccination, before people conceive. Any other ways that you've used that in?
Look, I think if there's any skin problems at all, where we're looking at those organs of elimination, because all the waste will be thrown out through the skin. So, you might have teenagers or people early 20s with acne, and it's a very good one for that. Things like the psoriasis. And children, when they're very young, like they're throwing out the inherited imbalances from the parents, and quite often will go out through the skin. So eczemas in, children under 1 year of age are very common. So, and there's a lot of pressure on the parents to make sure that, you better get, your child's got eczema. How disgusting, you're a bad parent. So the parents get a lot of pressure, but, you can work with green essence topically, but also the purifying internally. And as we said, there's so many people who've had injuries from the vaccines, or just, so the adding, I said, the Waratah to help with the heart, the pericarditis, the myocarditis, which is just really exponential growth. And it's not so much from the COVID itself, but more the vaccinations. Same for blood clots, whether from the vaccinations or from, having COVID and creating all sorts of lung problems as well. So, the normal purifying, and we have the wild potato bush, which is great for clearing the aluminium, the mercury, and all things like that. But then the others, just to strengthen those organs which have been impacted by both COVID and also the vaccine.
You've actually given me a good idea. I've just been using a lot of the COVID vaccines in homeopathic potency, using Ton Janssen's homeopathic detox therapy protocol. And I've just had a case recently of a boy who was given the vaccine last year, and potentially has developed some seizures around since then. So we've given him the vaccine back in potency, but actually the next day his whole body broke out in angiomas. And I'm just wondering if maybe I should have used the purifying essence maybe alongside doing the vaccine detoxing, kind of almost as like an organ support, to just help their body being able to detox a bit better without many of the aggravations that we sometimes have with the homeopathic remedies. So that, I guess, that could be one that we can maybe use alongside. Yeah.
And that's a nice thing. You can use your homeopathics with the bush essences. They work very well together. So, yeah. And, before COVID, we used to say if someone was getting vaccinated to take the purifying essence for the 2 weeks. And of course, emergency essence immediately before and after, make sure there's no reaction, anaphylactic shock, whatever. But, with the COVID and the spike protein that we're been suggesting take it for a month, and then we said add the Waratah to strengthen the heart, and also the tall mulla mulla for the circulation and the blood.
Yeah, and you said the tall mulla mulla for the spike proteins as well, which is amazing because, I remember when the vaccine first came out, so many homeopaths, very well-known homeopaths, were really quite heartbroken, saying we're never going to be able to heal clients from this. This is it. We can't come back from this. It's RNA technology. You can't undo that. But, I've actually seen the opposite in clinic, that between, the homeopathics and the flower essences, we've got so many incredible tools, and our bodies want to heal when it's given the right tools. We've got so many incredible things at our disposal in clinic that we can use to help heal people.
Yeah. I've always found that when there's a need in the society, essences will come down. So, if there's something else, I'm sure that essence will come through to address it. I mean, a good example is that was the mulla mulla we just talked about with radiation and 5G and, nuclear waste from Chernobyl and Fukushima. So as that need arises in society, essences will come down to really help humanity deal with whatever crisis or changing situation there is.
Speaking of which, that study that you had in there of the children using your electro mix in Belarus was mind-blowing. I mean, that's incredible. And how satisfying for you as a practitioner to be able to do healing on such a deep level for so many people.
Yeah, and very profound. I mean, these are the children who've been born many years after Chernobyl went off, but it's just infiltrated the water system. It's gone through the food chains. So it's going to be an ongoing problem. So it's fantastic that there is something which is going to be of assistance to help that. And it's nice too to have the studies done, because they're all cardiologists and endocrinologists, etc., who are running the study. So yeah, it was good. And then we've got mushrooms growing underneath the ground, and the networks they have in part of healing the ground. So, nature does have a very resilient energy about it.
Absolutely. I think your electro essence is going to be one of my most used remedies in my clinic, because one of the biggest obstacles to cure I see in my clinic are children addicted to technology and just living on their iPads. And, there's iPads in school and so much radiation in schools. It really should be added prophylactically to all the school water systems. It really makes it hard to heal a child who is on technology all the time. It really affects their vital force and, their behavior, their mental health. I always say to these parents, by giving this child all this access to technology, it's kind of like you're creating that highway for addiction. And so now it's technology, but when they're adults, they've got access to drugs and alcohol and everything else, and those pathways are already laid.
And these children, they've got that level. Each generation is almost like the diving board to go that next level from the previous generation. And there is that technological awareness that these children have. So they'll be very drawn to it, and as a parents, to keep that balance with nature, with, time away from it as well. It's I think we're going to have to use all the resources we've got to keep things in balance there.
Absolutely. I'm just thinking, I know you usually recommend with the essences that you kind of take the 7 drops, daily for about 2 weeks and then kind of use it as needed. But with the electro essence, do you think that's something a child could almost put daily in their water bottles to school? Or, because it's such an ongoing thing. I always say to people, if you're going to bang your head against the wall every single day, you can take arnica every single day and it's still going to help, but you're probably not going to have true healing until you stop banging your head against the wall. And that's what I feel like with all the EMFs that the kids, all of us, but our children especially, they're so susceptible because their skulls aren't as thick. And so is there something that is it okay to use on a more ongoing basis?
Well, that's why, fortunately, my wife had come up with the pendants. So, we've got an electro pendant. So we have a different size for the children's one, so that, it's less likely to break. It's a round one, a little bit more. So, when they're running and falling, jumping off skateboards and what have you, it's less likely to break. But having that next to your body is a really nice protection because it's stock strength. And then it also allows the child can be taking a different essence, maybe for self-esteem or for sibling rivalry or something like that, but they've got that ongoing protection because we're just exposed to so much more electromagnetic radiation. And as you said, the kids are in front of tablets, so much more than previous generations.
And one other question, do you find the remedies as effective on animals, and can you use it on plants? Like kind of like agri-homeopathy. Would you ever use the emergency essence if you've transplanted a plant or they've been exposed to heat, and can you use it on your animals as well?
Oh, look, definitely for both of those. And they work very quickly on children and animals. And my daughter's having her first pregnancy at the moment, and the cat they've got is quite an aggressive one. It attacks people who come to visit. So it's got mountain devil and dagger hakea and rough bluebell, and they're putting the drops on the paws, and they're licking. The cat's licking the paws, and so everyone was a bit worried what's going to happen to the baby. We don't want the baby getting scratched, for example. I've even had people who've had a sick goldfish, and they put the drops in the fish tank, and the goldfish has recovered. We've had aggressive fish in fish tanks. They put the mountain devil and the aggression stopped, let alone, our cats and dogs and what have you. And, we've got a book and a correspondence course on using the essences for animals. But, emergency is a great one. So many vets have said, oh, there's nothing we can do. We'll put your animal down. The people have taken them back, given an emergency, and they've survived. And so, yes, they work very well. Same for the land. Especially if there's been a lot of spraying. We had an organic nursery. They took over land which had been sprayed a lot. So, we were making the purifying in the spraying around, or energetically, if, things that there's been a bit of violence happen in the land, you can clear that. The billy goat plum, from when there's a bit of on plants getting mildew and mold. And so there's quite a lot you can certainly apply there for the plants. And, so it's a nice alternative.
It is. Now, if there is one flower essence that all of us around the world should be carrying with us and dropping into waterways at the moment to help heal the planet energetically in the aftermath of COVID, is there like one particular essence or one particular combination we should carry with us and just put little drops in waterways as we go?
Well, it was 19 years since the last flower essence, and I made that earlier this year. And it's called colophyllum. And again, it's that sense of when an essence is needed, it comes down. So one of the things we've got huge in our society is the level of division. So you've got people who, you took vaccinations, you're an idiot, or you didn't, you're a conspiracy theorist, or I'm a Republican, you're a Democrat, I'm a left wing, you're a right wing. I mean, there's so much division. I think the media has really played that as divisions up. So it's helping with that division, so you can get there and just listen to someone, and rather than judge them and just dismiss them, but hear what they have to say. And I think that's important. It's also very much around leadership. And we're seeing teenagers coming up and saying, well, this is important. We need to do this for the environment. And a lot of people think, oh, well, I haven't got the experience to be a leader. I'm only in my 20s or whatever. And I think we've all got leadership qualities to come out and say what's important we feel needs to be done. And this essence is pushing you out of your comfort zone. I'll let someone else do it. That sounds like a lot of hard work. I'm comfortable where I am. I'm sure someone will sort it out. So it gets you out of the comfort zone for you to do it. And it's that sense of caring and concern about people and the planet. And you've got leaders who are, okay, you do that, you do this. And that's not leadership. This is about, come on, this is the way to go, and inspiring and bringing everyone with you. And I think this is a very important essence at this time, and that resilience to bounce back. Some of the things we've just talked about that are going on in the world. This grows right by the ocean, and the branches, sometimes they're buried by sand, and then they pop back up. It's like, this is the way, nothing's going to stop us, let's go. So I think this is a really good essence at the moment.
I like it. I mean, I know it as a homeopathic remedy.
No, it's not colophyllum, it's calophyllum.
Okay, because I did wonder, does that grow in Australia?
It hasn't got the U in there. Yeah.
Okay, so how do you spell it?
CALOPHYLLUM.
Okay.
as opposed to the Colophilum, Caul, the homeopathic remedy.
Yeah. So two different plants.
Two different. Yeah, this is a quite a large tree which grows on coastal area. It started in East Africa, and over time the seeds have spread and it's gone through Asia and Oceania.
Oh, that is fascinating. Because when you said that, I did think to myself, I wonder if Colophilum is how I pronounce it, grows in Australia.
Yeah.
But that's so amazing. Now, for anybody who wants to get your full range of stock bottles for us as practitioners, do you ship worldwide, or have you got stockists around the world, or what's the best way for people?
If you go to our website, we've got distributors. We've got distributors in Austria and Germany and Switzerland, a lot of the German-speaking areas. You can get things directly from us in our education. You can do online courses, and then I mentioned I'll be in Germany teaching next year some courses. So yeah.
Amazing. And also you've also got a range of creams, you've got the pendants, you've got all the courses that people can get, the books that they can get, you've got some beautiful cards as well. That's absolutely gorgeous. There's single remedies, combination remedies, drops and sprays. You've got the whole lot there, and the kitchen sink. So
and
people
books in German as well.
And the books in German as well. Amazing. So people can go to Oz Flowers, that's ausflowers.com.au for more information. And is there any final message you want to leave us with, Ian?
Oh, look, I'm just very privileged to be able to speak at the conference, and a big thank you to you for your work here, and for Mathias for organizing it and just spreading out this healing knowledge into the world. It's a great gift he's given everyone.
It really is. And it's such a privilege to connect with you again. And thank you so much for everything that you do. I've got my Abundance Essence here right next to me. I've been using that lately and I've been loving it.
Fantastic. Thanks very much, Eugenie.
Thanks so much. See ya.